Hey everyone, here's the Align tb70. I finally completed the entire build. It's completely done. It flies well and I love it. Honestly, it's as of now, it's probably one of my favorite 700 birds because it looks complex, but again, it's anything but that. It's complex, but it's simple. It looks complex, but it's very simple in reality. It's not like the TB, like the Align, the Saab 700 Raw. That one's pretty complex for what it is. I mean, this flies just like it. It's just as good. To me, other good things about this kit, parts seem to be much cheaper and it's just well made. Align has been known for producing good quality kits and their parts. Everything's machined very nicely. Yes, of course, everyone has bumps on the roads. Um, they did have, several or some kits might have had some recalls and issues with the kits or design. Anyhow, I mean, this is part of part of getting it right, and they've made it right so far. And there have already been issues with this kit. They have been expressed by some owners, and I'm gonna touch base on that, based on my experience with it, and if I and in reference to see that if I even experienced any of that. Some I did, and I figured out after I experienced it. I thought I was the only one experiencing it, and after looking around, I found I wasn't the only one. But let's talk about the kit first, about the good things. It's a very efficient helicopter for being a belted design. Super lightweight, which I really like. I can actually feel it in the air. It feels much easier to control in a way. What I mean by that is, it just feels like I have to input less. Um, how would I say this? It just responds to my commands much better than the previous 700L, just because of that weight decrease. It just takes much less work to get it to do what I want because of the lightness in the model. It's just very efficient, very rigid. It's a modern helicopter. I expect it to be better. As far as the design goes, it does kind of represent something of a Saab 700 Raw. The design is similar, but again, everything kind of evolves in the future. It just evolves as it goes, and people are always going to be kind of head on, or leaning towards the same thing, which is good because it gets everyone on board. It's not a reason for me to say, hey, this is a clone or anything like that, and I'm not going to get it. Nope, that's not the case here. This is a good helicopter, and Align's been around for so many years, probably longer than Saab, and many people have copied them. So to me, it's like, I don't know, you can't just take it with a grain of salt because it's not a big deal. Now the frame to me on this one looks much better than the Saab 700 Raw. It just looks cleaner. It looks more simple, but yet it has that complex look. The Saab itself is complex. It's more work. It's harder to work on. Not to say that it's hard, but to me it's not as easy as this one. This is like a Chevy, the other one's like a Cadillac. In layman's terms, that's the way I see it. Now, this is nowhere near cheap at all or low grade or anything like that. reputable brand. It's a very good brand. It's machining, everything's just perfect. The quality is perfect, but there are some issues, and I kind of don't get discouraged because it is a new model, and it's been a while since they released anything, and I understand that when things are produced at a high rate, some things might get ruined in the process. But overall, it's a great kit. I recommend people get it. For $900, it's you're open to options at that point. But this is a good kit for what it is. I mean, it's honestly one of the cheapest 700s, the newer 700s you can get that is belted and looks modern. Why? Because if with my Tron, I didn't even get main blade or motor. It was just a bare frame. So the Tron itself, the 7.0, was at about, it was 900. There's 1,000 out the door, so about $1,200 with the frame, main blades, and the motor. This one was 900 with motor and blades. But of course, I still put my own blades. I put rails, 696s for the mains and 106s for the rears, for the tails. Let me show you guys my ESC. For the ESC, I'm running my Spectrum 120 amp 12S rated ESC. Maximum burst at 140 amps, which is perfect for this Align motor. And it's the RCM BL 700 MX, and it's a 530 kV motor. I like this motor because it only draws 90 or about 95 amps continuous, and maxes out at a max burst of a 130 amps, I believe. And that's okay because at max burst, this thing can output 140 amps for 12 seconds, which is great. Nobody really ever loads it for that long. At that point, you're already recovering. It's just a few seconds anyway. So this thing is pretty cool. I mean, it runs cool. I haven't had any thermal shutdowns with this kit, not even in the hottest days in summer. What I love about this tb70 in reference to the 700X, because it's supposed to be an upgrade. With this same setup for my electronics, my power system, I can actually achieve a maximum. With the calculator, I get about 2,600 RPM to the head. Now, with that said, that's pretty high. Now, I would never run it that high on a 700, but that gives me a lot of leg room for a 120 amp to run my 2,200 or 2,250 or even 300, and I won't shut it down at all. Now, that's good because on the 700X, I was only able to get at 100% output on the ESC and the curve. I was only able to get 2,000 max with the lower gearing on the 700X. But the 700X, it ran cooler because it had all gears. There was no loads, additional loads from the belts on the actual main head and the drive system, the drivetrain. So that's another thing to keep in mind. The tighter you have your tail and motor belt, the more amps you're going to draw. So you might overheat that ESC. But you also need to keep in mind, if you're going to run higher head speeds, you got to have those belts tight to the way they're supposed to be. I'm not saying tight, I'm not saying loose, just the way they're supposed to be, which is right. Now my belt tension for the main motor, I can probably show you guys so you guys can kind of reference when you guys are building yours. I've already flown it and I have had no issues with this belt. It's a 12 millimeter belt. This is all stock, by the way, and I know people have had issues with this apparently with the belt, I guess wearing or tearing. I'm not sure what it is because I haven't experienced it, but I've heard of it. So if you see my belt down here, you can see with the light, and if I poke that belt, you can see it just get with the slack I have on it, it just gets right behind that hole. If you look at it from the top or from the side, you know, let's actually do this. You can actually see it jump to the other side. You see the belt? So towards the front. It's not much slack. I mean, it feels soft, but it's not loose. You feel the tension in it, but it's not loose and it's not too crazy tight. It's enough so that it won't fall off or wear into the teeth or overheat and kind of just cause premature wear. I've already had 50 flights on it and it's been fine. Now, that's not the way the belt should sit. It's when the motor spools up that it starts to align the way it should. And you should have an even gap to the belt and the main and this pulley. So when the belt drops, you should have an even gap exposed at the top and bottom of the actual aluminum pulley. And that's how you know your belt's running true and straight. And you'll have to move your pulley up and down to get that right. And it should only run straight when it's actually driving the actual blades clockwise. And one more thing, I know people have mentioned with the main gear kind of grenading or falling apart. Now in the manual it does say to not over tighten that main gear bolt, and that makes total sense. It's a gear. Anytime you load plastic, you create fractures, stress, and you're already loading this gear. And just a quick tip out there, because this is a smaller gear, so there's a much higher load, double the load than there is on the 700X main gear, because it's a smaller diameter gear. It requires more torque to spin the blades, thus creating a higher load on the gear. It's exerting a higher load on the gear. If you see, it's a dual, as you can see, it's a dual stage transmission. So you got a 23 tooth pinion or pulley for the motor, and I believe the front metal pulley is about 50 tooth. So had this been a 25 tooth, I mean, you can see if you're dividing equally, let's say it's a 25 tooth, not a 23, by 2 more teeth, you're actually multiplying the torque of that motor by 2. So now it's double its strength, but of course the RPM, revolutions per minute, has reduced by half. But you don't need so much, because now your main gear is so small, it only takes a few turns to get this thing up to speed. Now you have much more torque now, so all that torque's being transferred to that smaller main gear. So if you over tighten that bolt and it's super tight, you're already causing a crack to develop, and as you fly it hard, well, guess what? That gear is going to fall apart and crack down the middle until it grows and grows and spreads, and finally it gives out and blows up in there and grenades, and then you have a helicopter coming down if you don't recover it. That's the idea behind it. So it has a nylon locking nut. Use it. That's what the locking nut's for. Tighten up the bolt, snug it, but don't tighten it up against the gear so tight that you're compressing plastic at that point and spreading it apart. Don't apply any grease to these things. Let them wear in. These things don't require any grease. I kind of read somewhere where someone was saying, hey, it's because it's running so dry that it's, causing heat. Nope. It's not gonna, it's just kind of like a Teflon plastic. It's kind of it's self-lubricating. It's kind of like Delrin, but it's not Delrin. So, that's the thing with the gear. I'm already on my 50th flight, and I have no issues with it. So, follow that procedure, please, because that will save you your entire $900 or $2,000 you have in this kit. So with this gearing, I'm able to achieve higher head speeds. I don't know why, but I guess it's higher than the 700X, which is great because now with this power system, I'm able to achieve the actual head speed this helicopter is rated for, and I can fly it at its max, potential. But of course, I don't need all that head speed. I mean, 2,000 RPM is just fine. 2,200 is perfect, but I really don't need so much head speed to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. Of course, the sound is nice in the air, and it's very rock solid in the air with higher head speed. Let's move on to the um, the servo layout. What they've done with the servo layout, I love it, but I honestly rather stick to a vertically mounted servo. I feel like they're more rigid, more stiff. Flat servos to me tend to kind of just, you can see it here, they kind of just move more. But that's fine. They're stiff enough for flight. You won't even notice it. I'm using torque servos. Reefs RC servo horns. They're clamping. And I had to machine them skinnier because I was in a hurry to build this kit. And I machined a bit off my frame, make these notches right here, so that this servo horn can go right behind it, because it's a bit longer so it touches. And that way, the reason I did it to mine is because it's unneeded. It's not needed because the aligned servo horns are to spec. They're the exact size you need. They're not longer than that. They're just the right. So buy those. I recommend those. Get any servo that's 25 tooth Futaba type, spline, and use the aligned servo horns. That way you don't have any interference with your frame or the anti-rotation bracket. Because in mine, full positive collective and then pitching forward, this arm would bind up so bad, and this servo would just kind of tilt in pretty bad because I'm using a nut behind here, and I had to kind of machine a little notch below here. You can see it right beneath the IGN and the logo align, so that the servo horn can give me the full travel. To me, I'm okay with this because I've already ordered a separate anti-rotation bracket. I will return this back to the way it was because it does bug me that I had to do changes to it. But honestly, at the same time, I'm gonna leave it. Now that I have the spare parts coming, it makes me feel better. Because last thing I like is the last thing I want is a Mickey Mouse helicopter. I really don't like Mickey Mouses. So, but this works. I mean, I like, the reason I kind of do like is because now if I need servo horns, I can just go to any hobby store near me and pick up servo horns. And most of my hobby shops have 25 tooth Futaba spline servo horns, and I don't have to wait for the aligned ones to come in. So now I have that option. Now I can do this and make it work this way. It's a pretty cool kit. I like how they marked the I painted it red, the center for zero pitch here. That way you can get all your linkages straight and get your servo horns at 90 degrees. Makes it easier for setup, and you still have your zero indices up at the top for zero pitch, which helps a lot for setting up mechanically. Yeah, very neat, very easy to work on. You got your servo here. I ran my wires through the outside, used some braided woven, I don't know what you would call that, and I kind of just put it into the outside, connects right to the fly barless unit. Did the same to the other side, and just folded this cable for the elevator servo. It's neat in there. It's not cluttered up in there. It's not too nasty. It doesn't get near anything that's spinning or moving. Another thing about this kit that I like is that they moved all the cables and everything away from the moving parts. You know, because you have such a small main gear and the tail belt mounted at its lowest position, it gets away from all the cables and everything that, you know, potentially might cause, you know, issues in flight if it comes in contact with, you know, anything that's moving, which is good. You know, all my other kits, I find that I have, you know, to kind of work around, you know, the gear or the belt or something like that. I mean, that's because it's just so big in there. But you get all this space up there, so that's good. I like that. Um, Everything's really accessible. I mean, if you bent these brackets on the servos, I mean, 2 bolts and it's out. If you want to get the entire servo out, like let's say you want to access these plugs back here easier, just remove the 2 bolts down at the bottom, remove the whole servo with the anti rotation bracket, and you have access to all that easier. Or you can just remove the plugs. You can also remove the entire tray with the fly wireless unit without having to unstick it. Yeah, it's really cool. And then you have the this cool tensioning mechanism at the rear for the boom. Although I feel like it doesn't give you too much leg room to really get that belted tail belt pretty tight. The reason I say that's because it's already at its max and the belt kind of feels loose, but it's not giving me issues. It's not skipping, it's not slapping inside the boom, and it's not too tight where the main head doesn't move freely, so it's all good. I like how they put the servo here. It's similar to the Saab. It works really nice. So I feel like maybe the issue for the mechanism not getting too tight because this sleeve is probably um, molded a bit too far back. If it were molded just a couple of, you know, maybe a millimeter forward more, the screw holes would probably be at the middle and you'd have more leg room to tighten that belt more. But if this is all they wanted, I mean, I guess this is what it was engineered to be, and I guess it's fine. It's just there's no specifics in the manual of how tight to get the tail belt, or, you know, where the pulley should be after it's, you know, tightened down, or how tight. So I guess we'll just have to do this with trial and error. So, and I guess I've already touched base on all the good things and bad things, except for two more things that I've experienced with this kit. The servos, that's on me because I decided to do custom work there, and I didn't want to get the original servo horns or something, you know, closer to spec. So yeah, I mean, servos are great. I like the layout. Landing gear, brakes easy. I really hope they can make something better, or just upgrade the landing gear, make it, you know, give it more support underneath because it breaks pretty damn easy. Let me see what else. Battery tray is pretty cool. Very simple. It's just super simple, and it goes in easy, comes out easy. What else? What else can we talk about on this kit? The main head is the same as what you see on the 700X. Only thing is the spindle is shorter and the main blade grips are shorter, and of course the arms are shorter because it's to reduce weight. It's more rigid that way too, less flex. One of the other two issues that I had, I haven't seen anyone else express one of them, which was a tail boom. Upon spool up after finishing assembly, without performing any flights, no blades installed, while grabbing the boom and grabbing a screwdriver on my right hand, and then touching somewhere on the frame, I get a static shock due to the static electricity in the being generated within the tail and the boom. It charges up. You guys can look up the theory for that. So, with that said, I've had multiple belted helicopters, and I've always to stop this. I mean, for most of you guys that know, dry temperatures, climate can cause this. But whenever you have something that's dry and you're rubbing dust or loose particles on it pretty fast, you'll create a pretty good static charge. So what I do is I remove all the residual stuff from the factory, from manufacturing, with alcohol and a microfiber rag. I clean the belt, clean the boom, and everything as best as I can, but mostly the belt and the gears, and just kind of get all that loose uh, little dust particles off of it, because it'll cause static charge to build up even easier and faster and quicker. And yeah, to my surprise, well, actually not so surprised, it went away like all my other kits. No more static shock. I mean, because it was static charge. It was affecting my flybarless unit. The issue with this one was that the this tail boom is not grounded to the frame. You can see that it's insulated with this sleeve, this little like sock on it, and then at the front is also a plastic um, tail boom mount. So there's no grounding happening here with the frame and the boom, which is fine because honestly, it's not. There's no static present anymore, so that's not a thing of my. I'm not worried about that anymore. It's been 50 flights. It hasn't came back. I don't think it'll come back unless I crash maybe and get some dirt up in there, and then I fly it again like this. And of course, but I always clean my stuff and keep it clean. And I don't really think it'll cause an issue, but it's something to consider because it was causing my flybarless unit to restart. So that's something I haven't heard of anyone complaining about this specific kit. The other one was um, more common, which was the dampeners in the tail. They're, in my opinion, too skinny and not really loading up the blade grips when you tighten up that spindle. So it's just all loose in there and it vibrates on a initial startup, or it'll just keep vibrating pretty bad to the point where the fin just shakes aggressively, and then it affects flight performance really bad. So I put my own dampeners in there and everything's good now. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much sums everything up. I put the main things were the dampeners on the tail. Clean your tail belt with alcohol. Just get all that dust off from the box and the packaging and all that stuff. Landing gear, you might just want to take it easy with your landings. I know some people bounce their landing gears like Tarek does on the ground. If he does that with this one, he's gonna break the landing gear pretty easy. Um, yeah, there's not much any more to say about this kit, other than it's a pretty good buy, and it's one of my favorite 700s now. Well, thank you guys for watching, and hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully you guys I hope this helped you guys with arising issues with this kit. There's really not many, but yeah, I'm here to help. Bye bye.